Let's bring in Mr. Dayo. Akintobi is our guest analyst on the program today. He's a journalist joining us as always. Mr. Akintobi, good to see you.
Good to be here as always.
Let me throw a question of the day to you.
Yes.
So we're asking past and present, elected officials and appointed officials of government, maybe let's do from 1999, if we put them through the rigor of anti-corruption tests. We know some have stood before, but right now, today, how many percent will pass that test? 10, 40, 70, 90? Your own assessment?
Less than 5. Less than 5 will pass. Wow. But less than 5
You're
will
not
pass.
kind.
No, but I'll tell you something though, they've got an out. Remember what happened in the UK recently with former Petroleum Minister Diziani? They get gifts. Did you make allowance for the fact that what they declare when they come into office versus what they possess when they leave office? They will claim that a good proportion of the increase came from gifts. And courts are ratifying that. Look at what happened in the UK. They found her innocent of corruption, bribery, theft. They said everything she was given, from hotel stays to private jet transport to jewelry from Harrods, they were gifts. So they already have a built-in out to escape from this scrutiny we are talking about, because there's no law against collecting gifts, whether for access, whether for thank you, whether for whatever.
But there's law against kickbacks now.
Yes, but unlike in America where they have a limit, maybe $20,000 or something to that, that says you can't receive a gift beyond a certain amount of money. We don't have a law like that. So they have a built-in excuse to be able to say, this is not stolen money, it's not corruption, even though we know better.
Look, your gift will get to 500 billion. I like that kind of gift, but I don't mind. Anyway, Nigerian Tribune. Let's go to Nigerian Tribune newspaper. That's where we were starting from. It talks about state police governors seek fiscal judicial reforms. It's a page 3 read. Just one writer. State police requires tactical precision, not political emotion. Ex-CDS, that's Chief of Defense Staff, Irabo. Akintobi.
Yes, this issue of state police is building up momentum, and everybody is in favor of it politically. But what the former CDS is saying, and several other people, is that it takes a lot more than just political maneuvering and political will to make this thing happen. There's a legal framework that must be established. There's human and civil rights that must be protected. There's issues of funding, issues of training. So it's not because we can't will it into existence willy-nilly and just assume that because from a sentimental standpoint we want this thing, that it can just magically appear overnight. There's a lot of work that needs to be done going into building this thing, starting from the ground up. And we don't want to get caught up in the hype of the fact that we want to do this to where we just move headlong without putting in the right checks and balances to make sure that there are no abuses, to make sure, even beyond the fear about abuse. How about the issue of funding, the issue of efficiency, the issue of being properly trained, being properly equipped? These are all things we need to consider. Where is the money going to come from? Yes, the states have a lot more money at their disposal nowadays, but when even the federal police is bogged down with issues of funding to where our local police divisions have to scramble for money for fuel in their vehicles, for the ability to fuel generators in their local police stations. So if the federal police is not adequately funded enough to where some of the policemen are even having to buy their own uniforms, and this is the federal government that has the money, quote unquote, to be able to sustain a federal police all across the federation. Now, how does a state that is receiving a fraction of the money that the federal government has will be able to fund such an exercise? I take Lagos State as an example. During former Governor Fashola's time, he set up something called the Security Trust Fund, where he appealed to the major Fortune 500 companies in the state, the banks, the multinationals, that security is in all of our interest, and all of us should participate in playing a role in securing lives and property within the state. And he was able to get these entities to donate money to a fund, and that fund supported the federal police. That was why you could see the presence of the RRS, which was then headed by the current IGP, Mr. Disu. You could see their presence in Lagos. They were ubiquitous. They had vehicles, they had armored personnel carriers, their uniforms were spot on, always starched and ironed. They had the latest weaponry, and essentially crime in Lagos went down quite significantly due to this private-public partnership. And those are kind of things that the states need to explore. But you ask yourself that there are some states that don't have well-to-do businesses. There are some states that are agrarian in nature. Some others are civil service states that just all employment is based on the civil service. So where will those ones get Fortune 500 companies to come and invest in their trust funds? They will totally depend on either their FACO allocation or internally generated revenue. So these are some of the things we need to take into consideration, and it means we should kind of not rush into this thing, but be measured and paced and make sure that we look at how other places have done it and what they did right and learn from what they did wrong. Make sure it's set up properly before we jump into it, so that, because what we want at the end of the day is a secure nation, secure states, secure communities. And the conventional wisdom today is that policing should be as local as possible, not even just state. If you could even have community polices and local government police, that the closer to the people policing is, the more efficient it will be, based on the fact that the people know the terrain. There are neighbors who are in the police. We feel comfortable to go and give them information. So without a doubt, it's an idea whose time has come, but the watchword is caution. Let's make sure we dot all the I's and cross all the T's in setting it up.
Akintobi, I'd like us to take a look at the New Telegraph. It stays with issues around insecurity as well, and a concern, as I think, for many Nigerians. The New Telegraph leads with this rider. It says, bandits threatens to kill Oyo pupils if troops advanced. That's coming from the defense minister. Bandits threaten to kill Oyo pupils if troops advanced. It's been more than 50 days now, in fact 56 or 55.
Yes.
The other day we saw a video of the army doing a rescue simulation in Port Harcourt when they were marking their 163rd anniversary, doing a rescue simulation. And I thought, so if you're trained for this, how come the situation has presented itself now? Go and rescue these people. Has been really very difficult. So I don't know what your assessment is. How are you reading this?
For the very reason that headline is giving in the New Telegraph is the very challenge that our military is facing. Don't get it twisted. They have the ability to go in there guns blazing and take these people out. They have the ability. They can strafe the entire forest, carpet bomb it, and obliterate any and everything that breathes or moves in that forest. The challenge and the reason why those people haven't been brought out today is the fact that the bandits are using the captives as human shields. Now, it's almost a zero-sum game, because if the purpose is to say we want to go and rescue these people and bring them out, then you can't use the guns blazing approach to go into the forest, because then you jeopardize the lives of the very people you are seeking to save. So what we need to ask ourselves, and it's a very difficult, tough question, and I don't envy those who have to make that decision, is that, because if you look at the terrorist demands, for example, they want some of their commanders released in exchange for releasing some of their commanders that were arrested, captured, and are undergoing trial. They want them released in exchange for the Orire captives, and the government has said, no, we're not doing that. So we have a very hard question to ask ourselves. Are we prepared to take the risk of losing the very people that we want to rescue?
Mr. Akintobi, we might have to ask at this point what the difference is between the kidnap of the Orire victims and the kidnap of the Ekiti, Leje-Meje, Dauniyo victims who have now been released.
Yes.
How did they, come out of captivity, and as against, the continued detention, captivity of the Orire victims?
Every single kidnap incident is different in its dynamics, and the process by which a rescue is carried out is different from situation to situation. In the Ekiti one, for all you know, perhaps the price being requested was not as steep as the one being requested in Orire. It's possible that the Ekiti people are not requesting the release of any major threat to the Nigerian people.
The bandits that held those ones are, small level bandits.
Maybe small fry bandits, maybe the individual commercial carpetbaggers who are in it for the profit versus the ideology. We don't know. For national security reasons, some information is shielded from the public, rightly so. But my view, and I think from all the intelligence I've read from security analysts and even security architecture personnel, is simply that the reason Orire is taking time is because they want a win-win situation where they get the victims out safely.
And some have even said, by the way,
priority.
that there was no intervention from the state or the federal government in the release of the endowment victims.
It's quite possible. It could have been their families paid the ransom. Absolutely, without government intervention whatsoever. Where I said, it's likely to be just that was a commercial enterprise versus Orire that has tied it into ideology in terms of, their commanders should be released. So it's not a very easy situation for the military because they're probably doing all of the underground work they can do to see how do they get in, rescue those people without harming any of them. Because now all of a sudden, it's a national issue. It weighs on the conscience of all of us on a daily basis, even though it's kind of moved off the headlines lately. But it's still an open sore, an open wound on the conscience of the Nigerian body politic. And so, it can't be resolved with guns blazing because then we defeat the very purpose that we're trying to protect. So there's got to be some way that the Nigerian military architecture is looking to see how can we do this. We don't want to release the commanders. At the same time, we don't want to lose the abductees. So this is a classic case of being caught between a rock and a hard place because none of the options is palatable.
And it's quite sad. Again, our hearts are with family members and especially the children and their parents and teachers still in captivity. But let's exit the subject of security now and head to The Guardian that does the usual expose on another matter entirely, but just as important, especially as it has to do with the subject of corruption and its relationship with real estate. Listen to this. Luxury ghost towns, how slush funds change fortunes, realities of real estate business. The big story will be found on pages 4 and 5. And so we're yet to exit this conversation on, those big real estate structures, whether they're in Banana Island in Lagos or they're in those estates in Abuja, mostly unoccupied. So it'll be interesting to read the details of the story to find out which direction The Guardian is taking it to. But I'm sure that you have some interesting thoughts on it, Mr. Akintobi.
Without a doubt, for a very long time, you drive around some areas of Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt, and you look at some of the glittering skyscrapers, and you wonder, who are those who can afford to live in these places? And if you happen to drive by them at night, you notice that most of the lights are off. That's because the places are largely unoccupied because nobody can really afford, in terms of the volume of these structures that are available, there's a glut because there's an overcapacity based on the number of people who can actually afford to live in these things. So you ask yourself, what was the purpose of building this to begin with? And it seems like from way back when, in the time when the PDP was in power, as far back as that, even before the Buhari administration, it seemed at a time when a lot of money was flowing through the political system that some wise men figured it out or were advised that the best place to park illicit funds is in real estate. Because first of all, it appreciates. It's not what can disappear or lose value or depreciate over time. Secondly, it is a secure place for your investment. It's not what can easily be taken away from you. You can easily hide your ownership of it by way of, proxy owners. So, and also, as you know, political money, when it comes in torrents. So if, you've got $1 billion idle for $1 billion naira idle, how many cars can you procure with $1 billion? And where would you put them? And how would you drive them? Or who would you rent them to? But if you put $1 billion into a building, one building can swallow it up very easily. So it's a good place to park huge funds. And so we found that happening over the years. But what is unconscionable about this is that is happening at the time that Nigeria has a massive housing deficit. I think it's 14 to 15 million individual housing units are required at this point in time to be able to make up for the deficit. So we've got the unfortunate situation now where people are having to spend the night in their cars or sleep in their offices because they can't afford to rent a flat. And I'm not talking about people living at the poverty line. I'm talking about middle-class people who now can't afford housing. And then on the other hand, we have all this expensive housing that nobody can afford to rent or to purchase. Right. So the bottom line is, yes, that report is spot on in terms of the fact that a lot of illicit money has flowed into the real estate sector in Nigeria, and what it has done is it has created overcapacity of over-expensive homes that nobody can afford, while neglecting the very mass type of low-cost housing that is really needed, and that all those slush funds could have provided a whole bunch of.
Well, we have to leave it here. I've done some reports around those who live under the bridge, those who are homeless, shelterless in this same Lagos and Nigeria.
Absolutely.
And it's a big, big concern. But most thank you indeed, as always, for your time on the program. Dayo Akintobi is a public affairs analyst and journalist. Thank you indeed for stopping by our studios this morning.
My pleasure always. Good morning, Nigeria.